Spider-Man Homecoming. Now this of course is going to be my spoiler-free review. If you guys want to check out my spoiler discussion, which I'm going to do right after this, I have a link in the description to that once it's uploaded. But I was very excited to see this movie. Of course I got my Spider-Verse shirt going. I wish I could just, if it wasn't going to make a bunch of noise, I'd just show you the whole shirt, but you can look it up. But it's my Spider-Verse shirt. Love Spider-Man. He's one of my top two superheroes across like all the comics. It's like him and Wolverine for totally different reasons, but Wolverine's like the hero that kills people, so it's like that's just interesting. It leads to some interesting stories because he doesn't really give enough, but he's always like, oh, that's still a good guy, but he goes around murdering people. He's like him and Punisher. Like I like them for that. It's unique. Spider-Man, however, is actually like full-on hero. Even with the symbiote, for people who know the symbiote and stuff, he just gets like a bit meaner, but he never like actually kills anybody, even when he gets like really dark points. And I think this movie really captured that well. Of course, the symbiote has nothing to do with this film, but man, it was a really good movie. I had a great time with it. Very funny. Of course, with what they did with Civil War, it was like, alright, well, even without that, it's like, we know, Spider-Man and Batman, those are like the two characters where, Spider-Man, Batman, Superman, probably. Top three characters where it's like, the main crux of their origin, like this is why they became this specific type of hero or this person in life. Everyone knows those three stories out of everything in all of comics. It's like, Spider-Man, uncle died. Batman, both parents died. Superman, everybody died. And everyone knows that. So, of course, we don't actually end up getting that in this film, so that was nice. They kind of already talked about that a little bit. They kind of reference it and stuff, but it's like not that big of a deal. You don't see flashbacks, you don't see this, and you don't see that. But it's awesome. I like the way they do the story for sure. Of course, Peter, this is the youngest version of Peter we've ever actually seen in the live-action films, which is super freaking awesome. Aside from that, the costume is cool. I like the new costume. I know there's always, in Spider-Man, every time some new thing comes out with Spider-Man, there's always a new costume, so that's always a big deal. Like, is it cool? Is it not cool? I like this costume. We do get to see multiple versions. It's in the trailer, so that's not a spoiler. But it's definitely cool. I love the costume in this. You get to see some of the tech sides of it, because of course Tony Stark is the one that gave him this outfit, which of course you see in Civil War. But it's really cool. I like the way they utilize that, because of course if you have that issue, which I think a lot of people did, for one, pretty much everything Iron Man / Tony Stark related probably worried people. It's like, how much is Tony Stark going to be in the movie? How much time is Iron Man going to spend like teaming up and helping Spider-Man? How much is Spider-Man going to rely on this outfit that Tony Stark gave him? Like, Peter Parker is this genius kid who makes his own stuff, and they really don't overutilize it. The suit, even though he gets like these specific things because it's tech based from Tony, they don't overuse it, and it's done in a really cool way where he either learns something organically or it's just like, it's simply put, it's just not overused. So that's great. Tony himself is not overused, and this is probably like my favorite use of Tony as a character in quite some time. Like, and maybe since Iron Man 3, honestly. Like, I like him. I like all the characters, when I watch Avengers. But it's always like, alright, everyone does this thing. I felt like, when we watch the Avengers, it's to see the Avengers come together. It's rarely to see this person do something epic. Like, in Civil War, that was specifically a Captain America movie. So, of course, it focuses on him. It focuses on Bucky. And it focused a bit on, Tony and then also Black Panther, of course. So they were like the four main characters. But really, Tony was like the fourth out of those three characters, because it was like, oh, his tragedy happened like a long time ago. And then it's like, the other characters were dealing with stuff. But this, he was the main part of it. It was like him and then Peter. And it was about as close as we've come to seeing Iron Man as like the main lead since, Iron Man 3. Excuse me. And I like what they did with him. It was more human. It wasn't like the big playboy thing, and that was a part of it. But it wasn't super over the top where it's just like him cracking his jokes all the freaking time. It was like he had a serious role in this because he's the one who, he got this kid involved in some really crazy stuff. And they bring that up. They bring up the consequences. They bring up like, yeah, this happened in the past, but this is what's happening now. And if you do this specific thing now, it'll go this way, and I'll feel like this, and you'll feel like that. Or you won't feel anything because maybe you'll be dead. So there are a lot of different elements that they actually talk about that we don't see too often, because it's just like, which I love, but still it's just like, hey, here's the Avengers, and then we fight, and it's really cool. So I like what they did with this. Story-wise, the villain, super awesome. Vulture is absolutely amazing in this movie. Actually, never would have thought in my life, I'd be like, man, I want to see more of Vulture. I would never have ever expected that I would say that, because Vulture, interesting, he can definitely be a cool villain. Like, any villain can be cool if it's written right. And Vulture is always that character where he can be menacing, but I've never thought of him as like a cool villain. Like he does something that's menacing. You know, we go Sinister Six type stuff maybe, and it's like, yeah, the characters are cool, but this was like the style of it, especially it's not that bright green outfit of a balding guy with, you know, feathers and stuff. It's a, you know, mechanized version of his outfit, like the jacket, you know, to have the little ruffles and stuff. It looked really cool. Michael Keaton did an unbelievable job as the villain. Very well done there. Of course, big thing of Spider-Man is the comedy. Absolutely done well, not just with Peter, but the other characters around him. Done absolutely well. His friend Ned, his best friend, love him in the movie. He's super freaking cool. Zendaya's character, Michelle, she's super awesome. I love her. Like the way they made her, I was really surprised because I didn't really, you know, like what you see from that trailer. Like I feel like they only show like one clip of her from like the whole movie in any of the trailers. But she's like that through the whole movie, where it's just like, oh, okay. She says stuff and she's just like there, but it's always really funny and it's just great dialogue every time they show her. So the side characters are really well done, and I feel like everyone actually gets a decent amount of time, especially with this being like the first movie. Is like they prioritize, obviously Peter is the main character, our main villain, and then you have Tony, of course, being like that overarching thing for the cinematic universe, and then of course you have Aunt May, and then the best friend, and then Michelle's character. And it's like, alright, the side characters, you know, I feel like everyone gets a decent amount of pace for how important they're going to be for this first film. Other characters might be more important later on, but I think the way they do it for this first film is like, alright, that's a great way to do it. So I love that. For anyone who reads the comics, this is probably one of the best films as far as references. They have a million different things where it's like, oh man, that, you know, some stuff is like maybe a reference to this or that, and it's like, okay, they have this thing for Spider-Man, they have this thing for other characters. I'll kind of just let you guys figure that out, but there's some stuff in there that's like, oh, they already have that plan for, you know, 10 years from now and stuff like that. So I was like, okay, curious to see where they take some stuff. There's a scene that leads into like the final battle straight from the comics. As soon as I saw how it looked, I was like, that's right from the comic books, and I thought that was awesome. It was like an exact scene minus some water. That was pretty much it. And I was like, that is awesome, because that was such a big moment in the comic books. Like, that was freaking amazing to me. So there are a million references where it's like either referencing the MCU or referencing stuff from Spider-Man or referencing stuff just from, you know, Marvel, like comics in general, not like the MCU. But it was really well done. I love that, where it's like, okay, this is happening here, and you can see the threads and how things are playing out and all the different references and stuff. And I love that. Peter as Spider-Man, or Tom Holland as Spider-Man, definitely great. He was great as Peter as well. Like, I think they did the perfect blend. Like, it was always one of those things when, you know, before this came out, it was like, alright, you have Tobey Maguire and then you have Andrew Garfield. And the big thing is like, alright, well, Tobey Maguire, a lot of people felt he did Peter Parker perfect, but maybe not Spider-Man perfectly. And then it was the opposite with Andrew Garfield, where it was like, he was great as Spider-Man because he would do the one-liners and stuff, but when he was Peter, he was still kind of cool, and it was like there wasn't that much awkwardness. He would still make a bunch of jokes and make people laugh. It's like, that's, even like small jokes, that's a bit too cool for Peter Parker, and I think they toned that side down, and they got it like perfect with this one, where it's like he's perfect as, you know, Peter Parker, where he might say something here and there that makes someone laugh, or, you know, very minor stuff, but switch to Spider-Man, and he's super cool, and he's doing everything he can to be as cool as he possibly can be as Spider-Man. And then he comes back to Peter Parker and is like, well, not only do I have the secret identity of Spider-Man, but everyone knows me as Peter Parker, so I kind of have to still revert back to that as Peter Parker. I can't still be as cool, because of course I can't just be like, this is my secret identity. But I love the way they did it. I really thought the balance was perfect. The action is really good in this. There's one specific sequence, actually the ferry sequence, there's a shot they have in there, it's like a long shot. Love that. That's probably my favorite visual shot, because they do some stuff in here with Peter as Spider-Man. I think this might actually be like the most CG heavy one, I feel, personally speaking. I feel like they do a lot of Spider-Man jumping and doing a lot of the extra stuff that Spider-Man would do, because he's so agile. And it would be the simplest of stuff, like jumping from building, well, I mean, obviously it has to be CG, but some of the simplest stuff, he'll be doing like extra like movements, or he'll be like doing stuff sideways, because Spider-Man could jump through like almost any random tube or hole and be like, boom, I did it perfectly, because he's Spider-Man. So they kind of toy around with that a little bit, I noticed, as he's doing simple stuff like, you know, jumping across a building here and there. It's like, okay, they make it CG, and you can definitely tell there's certain parts where it stands out more than others. That's really probably like my only gripe about the whole thing. But it's definitely cool. Like, I actually like it more for that, just because it's like, okay, well, even though it's more CG, and it's not like it's horrible. Like I said, there are really only certain parts where, you know, it stands out more than other parts. But I like that idea where it's like, okay, they get into the idea of this is a young Peter Parker. He's just jumping around, like literally just jumping from place to place. He does the most minimal type things, like the most extra stuff for the most minimal tasks, just from going from building to building, where he could probably leap over like 3 buildings at a time if he wanted to. Maybe not because he's, you know, the actual young Peter Parker. But I love the way they did that. Like I said, the action is really well done. The way they kind of introduce him and show him as this version of Peter Parker within the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I actually love that, because it's at the point where it's like, okay, once we hit Avengers, it's like, yeah, okay, this green dude is crazy. This dude has a hammer that summons lightning. This is like some sort of robot ghost thing. Like, I don't know what people think in the actual cinematic universe, but you got like Vision, you got Iron Man, you got Captain America, and then it's like, oh, here's just this dude, this kid who's Spider-Man. Like, people of course don't know it's a kid, but it's like, oh, okay, Spider-Man, sweet, whatever. He ain't flying, he ain't stopping aliens, he ain't doing none of that stuff. He stops robberies and stuff like that. And I like the way they do that, where it's like it's not like what you see, you know, in a lot of versions where it's like, oh crap, it's Spider-Man. It's like, alright, it's Spider-Man. Like, did you see Thor last week? Because he was here. So I kind of like the way that they play around with that idea where, as Spider-Man, this is him so early on, he's still not like, oh man, it's Spider-Man. Like, he really has to build up, and he's just walking, he can just walk around, and it's almost like people don't even give a crap. It's like, sweet. And he's the YouTube hero. Like, they say that a couple of times in the movie, and it's like, he's like known from YouTube. Like, that's Spider-Man at this point in this film, and I kind of love that idea. And, you know, I'm excited to see kind of how that builds up. But there's so much other stuff I want to talk about, but all of it is pretty much spoilers, so I'm going to end this here. I really love the movie. Highly recommend you see it. If you're a big Spider-Man fan, especially if you do read the comics and you get a lot of the references, I do think you'll enjoy this more than people who don't. But even if you don't read the comics and you don't get like every single reference, it won't matter. It's really fun. It's definitely a fun movie. I think the balance of it is really good, where it's like, especially for a Spider-Man movie, because it's almost like the sequel to the other Spider-Man movies, where it's like the first of those, the last two franchises, they start with the story. Uncle Ben dies, you have that sadness, you have the spider and all that, and it's like, oh man, I have these great powers and now great responsibility, but my uncle died and that's so sad. It's just like, nope, it starts, he's been Spider-Man for a little bit. Obviously he was in Civil War. It's like, crap, I fought with the Avengers and stuff like that. So it's very lighthearted, but at the same time they do have those serious moments in there, especially if you saw the second trailer that actually has like Tony and Peter talking to each other. That's definitely a serious moment. It's one of the best parts of the entire film, actually. It's really good. It's really great. But it's also kind of funny a little bit if you look at it a certain way. But really love the whole movie. There are definitely some moments where I'm like, man, I can't wait to see that again. So I would highly recommend it. Of course, we'd love to know what you guys thought about the film. Naturally, like I said in the beginning of this, I will be doing a spoiler discussion. So if you guys want to hold off your comments, you can just save them and put them there. But if not, you can put them in the description or in the comments below, of course. Just make sure you put a spoiler tag if you're going to put like actual spoilers about the actual plot or anything like that. But if you're keeping it vague, just go ahead and put your comments down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.